Okay, and welcome back. As everyone gets settled back into their seats, we'll get started with our next section of our 2019 budget discussions. And I think that's going to consist of an introduction and an overview of the process that we have coming forward for the balance of our time as we narrow in and focus specifically on the City of Grande Prairie organizational budget. And I will look to Mr. Grande for an introduction of that process and basically, I guess, to sort of set the frame of reference for council as we enter into our budget deliberations. Mr. Grande.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everybody. My name is Horacio Galanti. I'm the interim city manager for the City of Grande Prairie, and I will present an overview of the budget process that we will follow over the next 2 to 3 days. The main strategies to achieve a proposed 3% tax reduction target in 2019, the foundational concept of priority-based budgeting in this first iteration, some highlights about corporate efficiency as a journey that we started in mid-2018, and the main packages where Council is expected to vote over the next few days. Also, I will touch base on some of the external risks the organization may face in the near future due to the legalization of cannabis and the uncertainty in the municipal sustainability MSI funding allocation from the province. Finally, I will present the proposed 2019 to 2022 tax rates for this budget cycle, and I will show the historical evolution of the tax rates since 2004, comprising the last 15 years. So the 2019 to 2022 budget process started at Council Strategic Planning session, where the strategic plan was created back in January 2018. CLT formulated the corporate objectives during February, as you follow the flow chart on the screen. And the different city departments work on the creation of departmental business plans, key performance indicators, and developed operating and capital plans during the summer months, following the philosophy of cascading principles. CLT then initiated a corporate vetting process to determine the final allocation of resources according to the priority-based budgeting model and the main pillars of Council strategic plan. Information was then shared with Council, and feedback was incorporated into the main strategies and resource allocation in order to create the packages and financial tools that will be presented in more detail during the next few days. After budget deliberations are completed and tax rates are established, the budget will be adopted during a regular council meeting on December 3rd. In the next few slides, I will present a high-level overview about the next few days. So today we had a CIBC economic forecast at the global and national level, and Mr. Glavin presented the local economic forecast. There was discussion with Council about this main schedule, and a consensus was achieved on how to proceed, and the decision was to combine operating and capital presentations via the preparation of strategies and packages for Council to vote. Management followed that direction to produce the master schedule that you have in front of you, and it's on the screen right now. Additional time can be added if needed at the end of the proposed sessions. So you have this detail in front of your workstations. I will touch base for a moment on corporate efficiency. We have initiated a journey to corporate continuous improvement as a way of thinking, and over time it will be embedded in all our operations. Our vision is to centralize this effort under a corporate efficiency office, utilizing existing resources. The priority-based budgeting is a tool which are using to evolve to a new strategic and higher level of organization performance and service delivery. This is the first year of this iteration. So PBB is an evidence-based system that quantifies resource allocation to the highest and best use and provides a means to report on outcome results. PBB uses performance outcome measures and key performance indicators and reporting as one of the tools to aid in the analysis of data. As part of the process, we ranked 267 services that the city provides to our residents. A list of those services and rankings can be found in your budget packages. In terms of continuous improvement, this is a systemic cultural change in our organization. So our goal is to train employees at various levels to empower them to make continuous improvement part of their own daily work. We are going to utilize different systems and methods like Lean, which focuses on processes, reducing waste, and improving flow and operational efficiency. It's mostly used to analyze and improve upon repetitive processes. Agile focuses on people and enhancing responsiveness, and other continuous improvement methods we're going to use include Kanban, Scrum, and Kaizens. We're going to target exercise to resolve specific problems. Council is familiar with some examples we initiated already in 2018, like the canola field to the key project in order to facilitate and streamline development. Some changes on the procurement process and delegation of authority for development officers. Also, we will use these methods when we analyze alternative service delivery models in 2019. Following Council's directions, we have identified the year 2019 as a tax reset. So management has developed financial tools and strategies for Council's discussion and debate this afternoon. I will provide a conceptual overview of these strategies right now, and then in the next slide, and our CFO, Ms. Susan Walker, will provide detailed information during her presentation this morning. There are also 5 packages, as you see on the screen, that the directors will present, combining operating and capital items where Council will vote. The packages are community enhancement, mostly encompassing the community living service area, infrastructure and sustainability, all the infrastructure departments plus energy and environment, organizational efficiency, mostly corporate services and corporate initiatives, Be Safe, Feel Safe package, encompassing mostly protective services service area, and there is a package that we call accelerated initiatives. This is a council package. It's open agenda for discussion. So management has identified $3 million over the budget cycle for initiatives or projects that can be accelerated by council at council's discretion. Management will provide a list of tentative options, and council is free to adjust the list at will. As I mentioned, within each package, operating and capital items will be presented. Council members can flag items within the package to be adjusted and or removed. Also, council members can add new items or propose any modifications in funding levels within the package. The last slide on each package will reflect the total operating and capital budgets for the cycle. I suggest that flagged items be discussed at the end of each package after the presentation by directors. The total, the bottom line number, may be adjusted by our finance department based on potential adjustments done, and a final vote will be performed prior to proceeding to the next package. This is going to be like our routine over the next few days. Management has identified 3 main streams to classify these 5 strategies that you have on the screen. These main streams are savings, efficiencies, and revenue. The first strategy is manage manpower, and it falls under the savings category. So management will intentionally delay filling some positions for a period of 2 months, can be variable, to realize savings. And this area is totally under management control, so can be adjusted as needed to realize the financial impact of $2.9 million. Any new resources requested and approved in 2019, as per Council's deliberations, will be filled during the second quarter of 2019. The next strategy is electricity franchise fee adjustment. This strategy falls under the revenue category. The Municipal Government Act allows Council to grant an exclusive right to have a utility service provided for a period of no more than 20 years upon approval by the Alberta Utilities Commission. The franchise agreement gives ATCO Electric the exclusive right within the city to use designated portions of roadways, right-of-ways, and other lands owned, controlled, or managed by the city to construct, operate, and maintain the electrical distribution system. ATCO Electric agrees to pay the municipality a franchise fee for each calendar year. The franchise fee is calculated as a percentage of the company's actual revenue in that calendar year from the distribution tariff rates as a charge for the electric distribution system within the municipal service area, excluding any amounts refunded or collected from riders. The franchise fee can be adjusted annually, effective January 1st of the following calendar year. The franchise fee is capped at 20%. We are currently at 7.75%. Management is proposing a 2.25% adjustment for 2019. It's worth to note that the electricity franchise fee has not been adjusted since 2005. The next strategy is the venture debt refinancing, and this will fall under the revenue category as a cash flow improvement. The main principle supporting this strategy is to distribute the cost of municipally owned finance assets over the anticipated life of the asset, allocating the cost to the population who are and will be benefiting from the asset. This creates significant, sustained tax relief for 11 years, and an average 4.8 million in debt servicing for the first 5 years, and an average of 4.1 million over 11 years. This strategy will allow the city to become more competitive with our tax rates, using the principle of amortization of loans, generally matching the lifespan of the asset. The next strategy is fees and charges review. This falls under the revenue category. Administration is compiling all fees and charges into one consolidated fees and charges bylaw. Currently, we have fees and charges disbursed across more than 20 different bylaws and policies. The consolidated bylaw will be finalized at the end of 2018, and departments will review and propose a new fee schedule in Q2 of 2019. Some fees and charges have not been modified for more than 10 years. The last strategy is review of service delivery models. This falls under the efficiencies category, and there's an expectation to generate $750,000 additional. A team with corporate reach has been established, including internal and external resources, to evaluate service delivery models to identify opportunities for improvements and cost savings. So this is a high-level overview, and Ms. Walker will provide specific details on each strategy after my presentation. In the next couple of slides, I would like to talk about risk. And there are two topics, MSI and cannabis. So the province initiated a Municipal Sustainability Initiative, or MSI Funding, back in 2007. This grant has been used to fund a significant portion of our capital plan, mostly used for roads, and the percentage is variable between 30 to 50%, depending the year. The fund is secured until 2022, as you can see on the screen, but there is uncertainty beyond this point. The city has provided input to the province to develop a long-term sustainable model to create certainty and reliability to fund our 10-year capital plan. Due to the uncertainty beyond 2022, all projects previously funded by MSI are shown as unfunded in the long-term capital plan, and the MSI allocation is reduced to 0 in the graph on the screen. The next category is cannabis. The Municipal Cannabis Transition Program is a program that was created by the province and will support eligible Alberta municipalities with increased enforcement and other implementation costs related to the legalization of cannabis. Municipal Affairs will administer the program and approve funding allocations. The total program has a fund of $11 million. 60% of the funding will be allocated in 2018 to 2019 and 40% in 2019 to 2020. For Grande Prairie, the allocation is approximately $128,000 in 2018 and $91,000 in 2019. There is a significant uncertainty pertaining to the impact of cannabis legalization. Expenses related to enforcement services, RCMP, community social development, and crime prevention could be impacted due to the change in legislation. The cost incurred by our municipality to date due to the legalization of cannabis is approximately $130,000, mostly preparing legislation, legal and consulting services, and staff time. Although some expenses are uncertain in years to come, management analyzed the current cost per capita to provide all municipal services in our municipality versus our standard benchmark communities. With the airport financial impact removed from Grande Prairie and water, wastewater, and solid waste impact removed from other communities in order to make the figures comparable. So you can see the general overview on the screen. In summary, the 2019 to 2022 proposed tax rates are represented in the graph on the screen. -3%, and I believe for first time in history, a negative tax rate proposal. 1.5 2020, 1% 2021, and 0 2022. This graph is showing the historical evolution of taxes since 2004. In the last 15 years, up to date, and the proposed tax rate for the budget cycle. The historical average shown in blue is plus 4.418%. The proposed 4-year average, shown orange or red, is minus 0.125%. In a single-family dwelling typical house assessed at $309,000 in Grande Prairie in 2018, the impact on the tax bill in 2019 will be a reduction of $95. $46 positive in 2020, $31 in 2021, and no change in 2022 due to the 0 tax rate. These tax rates have been designed considering a positive vote on the 5 strategies and the packages that will be presented. Any adjustments made to the strategies and or the packages will trigger a tax impact recalculation and potential adjustments to levels of service provided by the city. Finance will provide a live tax impact update after each break, because potentially there will be adjustment on the packages or strategies, so the numbers may change. So the live tax rate compared with the proposal will be presented several times during the day for council better handle on the final numbers. So we have 2 to 3 intense days in front of us where many decisions will be taken. The entire administration is at your service to provide information as needed in order to make the process smooth, transparent, and practical. On behalf of the corporate leadership team, I would like to thank Council and the entire administration for all the hard work in preparing the 4-year business plans and associated budgets. We are all working here as one team for the good of this community. In my final remarks, I would like to highlight that the city is embracing innovation. It has embarked in a journey of continuous improvement in corporate efficiency and will explore and implement, where appropriate, alternative service delivery models. These are foundational pillars for our organization. With Council's support, the city will make major investments in critical infrastructure, economic development, and in the well-being and safety of our residents, using technology, knowledge, and expertise to work together and to engage our community. Together, we are creating a livable city for our current residents and for future generations. In rushing toward that future, we remain mindful that some things cannot change. These include the city's long-held values and the commitment to our residents to improve the quality of life of this community. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have about the budget process.
Thanks very much, Mr. Galante. Any questions for the city manager at this stage before we move into some of the details, I guess, around the financial strategies from our chief financial officer? I have one, Mr. Galante. Can you just, with respect to the MSI funding, can you speak to, you mentioned that the funding is stable till 2022, and can you speak to the stability of the funding and when we have certainty, and contrast that with what we're required under provincial legislation to have in terms of a capital plan? My memory is that the province brought in a requirement for municipalities under the new Municipal Government Act to have a longer-term capital plan. City of Grande Prairie obviously does a 10-year one, but we have at least a minimum requirement under provincial legislation now that we didn't have before.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is correct. Under the modernized Municipal Government Act, there is a requirement for Council to pass a 3-year operating plan and a 5-year capital. So, as you remember on the chart, I will put that back on the screen. The allocation will end in 2022. That will leave the final year 2023 with a question mark for administration in order to allocate funding for our capital plan.
So we're required to have a capital plan to 2023 at this stage. So what's the status of the projects in that 5-year capital plan? How are they going to be completed?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The projects previously funded, historically funded using MSI are shown as unfunded in 2023 in the long-term capital plan. So as we evolve through the cycle, we are in contact with the provincial government to discuss this matter because it's a serious concern for the city in terms to replace or at least to have certainty in terms of funding for 2023 and beyond. But for now, in your books, the long-term capital plan, those projects are unfunded.
And what are examples of projects that are regularly funded by these kind of capital dollars or this grant?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We use mostly for road, could be road overlays, full depth reclamation, road reconstruction, sidewalks, some trails. So mostly for vehicular or pedestrian infrastructure is being used.
So essentially 2023, then there's over $9.5 million of road programs that either won't be done or would be done requiring a tax increase. Is it if there was no other provincial funding?
And yes, that is correct, Mr. Mayor. We will need to seek additional sources to fund those projects in order to maintain critical infrastructure in the city.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Plott.
Thanks, Mayor Given. Just on the MSI funding, we're going to get into capital later. So we are, I guess it's a little weird question, but we're allowed to allocate money from capital to be MSI if it's for certain projects. If we wanted to move funding from capital tax projects to MSI funding, we're allowed to do that, depending on the project, I guess. But if we, on a road overlay, for example, if it's a capital tax item, could we make that MSI, or vice versa? If it says MSI, could we make that capital tax?
So if I understand the question correctly, is in the future, in absence of MSI funding, if we can use capital tax funding as a source to develop road projects, for example?
Yeah.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
However, there is a tax impact associated with that.
Okay. Well, I guess the good news is we got 4 years to figure that problem out, but it's definitely a problem coming in the future for sure.
That is correct. Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Plott. Any other questions for Mr. Galante before we move on to some detailed look at the financial strategies? Seeing none, then I guess we'll turn our attention to our financial services officer, and maybe we're going to reset. Are you going to move to the presenter's table? Okay. Thanks, Mr. Galante.
Yeah, thank you.
So we'll let Ms. Walker get oriented. Ms. Walker, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here this morning. Good morning to all of you. So I'd like to begin by providing a little bit of background on the development of the business plan, operating budget, and capital plan proposal that you see before you. This plan represents the culmination of a thoughtful, careful, and prudent budget process. Management exercised due diligence in the preparation of the entire plan you will be presented with over the next 2 days or so. The plan is developed ensuring that 2018 service levels are maintained pending a comprehensive review of each service. The inclusion of additional personnel resources are the result of careful consideration given to the estimated cost compared to the expected benefits that are realized from each of these new positions. All positions are included to address existing gaps in service delivery and to promote the direction that Council has established with your strategic plan. Early in 2018, Council developed and approved a strategic plan that enabled management to view city service delivery in a different light and to envision a new course in our organization to achieve Council's desired outcomes. These outcomes included the development of an evidence-based decision-making model, a plan that will bring Grande Prairie into a more competitive position in the region, and a plan to reduce the tax burden on the community. As with any journey, the beginning is the most difficult. The presentation of the 2019 to 2022 plan marks the beginning of management's journey to realize Council's strategic objectives. 5 financial strategies are presented for Council's approval to start the organization down this new path. Management has taken a holistic view of the challenges our organization faces and are presenting a plan that addresses the three major issues that City Manager Galante spoke about. There are three separate and distinct strategic streams included in this financial package. They're designed to meet the challenges in the revenue stream, challenges in the expenditure stream, and challenges in the efficiency in service delivery stream. The revenue challenge is addressed through the proposal to adjust electricity franchise fees and through a comprehensive review of fees and charges. The expenditure challenge is addressed through the proposal to adjust the way manpower is managed and through the debt refinancing proposal. The efficiency challenge is addressed through a comprehensive review of the 267 separate services the city provides to ensure that we're doing the right thing at the right time in the right way. Management's proposed 3% tax reduction for 2019 is dependent on Council's approval of these 5 strategies. The city organization is primarily a service industry. The provision of service requires people. Salaries and benefits make up approximately 46% of the direct costs incurred to provide these services. This proposed strategy of managed manpower will achieve a significant and sustained reduction to salary and benefit costs in the organization without impacting service delivery to community. This includes intentionally delaying the filling of vacant positions as they become vacant in our organization and intentionally delaying the recruitment of new positions for 2019. The expected impact of this initiative is a reduction in salary and benefit costs of $2.9 million. The next financial strategy is related to the electricity and franchise fee rate adjustment from 7.75% to 10%. This is a reasonable adjustment based on our municipal comparators and still ensures Grande Prairie has the lowest electricity franchise fee amongst those municipalities who recognize one. This is a sustained revenue source throughout this business cycle that is estimated to have minimal impact on the community. And the financial impact of this initiative is expected to be $1.5 million. The city borrows funds through the established provincial lending authority, the Alberta Capital Finance Authority, or ACFA. ACFA is established to provide Alberta municipalities with flexible financing for capital projects at a lower than market interest rate. The City of Grande Prairie's debt limit is established annually through the Municipal Government Act and is currently set at $262 million. City Council has gone further and established its own lower limit of 80% of the provincial limit, which is $210 million. The actual debenture debt for the city at December 31st, 2017 is $130 million and is typically held for 20-year terms. In 2019, the cost of servicing this debt is projected to be $16 million. This strategic proposal is one that has been used by other Alberta municipalities and, if implemented by Council, will have a meaningful impact on cash flow. This proposal will see 33 separate loans with a combined total debt of $88 million and an average interest rate of 4.13% consolidated into one loan, taken over a 30-year period with an interest rate of 3.5%. This proposal has the opportunity to alleviate $4.8 million in tax burden each year for the first 5 years, and then on a reducing scale for the following 6 years for an average of $4.1 million over the 11-year period. The advantages include improved cash flow and support for moving borrowing policy to more closely align with the life of the asset, and for the payments to spread out to those who benefit from use of the infrastructure. There would be a $3.6 million one-time charge to consolidate and renegotiate our current debt, and the total interest paid would be higher from moving from a 20-year term to a 30-year term, at an additional cost of approximately $1 million per year. This 30-year term provides for a cushion period where this infrastructure is not expected to require replacement at the end of this term. There will still be an estimated 15 to 20 years of life left in these assets included in this proposal. The fees and charges strategy will consolidate more than 20 outdated fees and charges bylaws into one bylaw for ease of administration and regular review. Existing fees and charges will be evaluated, and adjustments will be proposed where it is reasonable to do so. This strategy is expected to realize approximately $250,000. Management is committed to commencing a strategic and comprehensive review of specific service delivery models, with the expectation that adjustments to improve effectiveness, efficiency, and affordability will be realized. Management will identify the top services that have the most potential for cost reductions or revenue opportunities. A team model will be utilized to ensure that we have the right people conducting the required analysis. This strategy is expected to realize sustained reduction in costs of approximately $750,000 in 2019. Thank you for your attention. Management is requesting a motion of council to adopt the use of the 5 strategies that are introduced to you today for your consideration. And I'm happy to address any questions that you may have.
Thanks very much, Ms. Walker. Maybe we'll start there with questions at this point. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you. Just a question so I could put this impact into perspective. Could you remind me again? I know there's an amount, I think it was 1.1 million, but I'd like to be reminded of about that's equivalent to about a 1% tax increase. So what's the amount of, if we find savings of this amount, it's got about a 1% tax impact?
Thank you, Mayor Given. That amount is $1,170,000 in 2019.
Any other questions, Ms. Walker? Ms. Walker, I had one around the fees and charges. You identify that as I guess, essentially a revenue, potential revenue increase, and the $250,000 that was identified. Is that an ongoing annual, or is that a partial year for 2019, or what would the expectation be on a full year?
Thank you, Mayor Given. It's very rough estimates at this point in time, but the $250,000 was expected to be for a partial year of 2019, okay. Approximately half the year.
Okay, and so the impact of that, is the impact of a full year in 2020 considered in the projections?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Prior to the motion that Director Walker is looking for in regards to the strategy, I wanted to discuss with Council. Over the last few weeks, Council has had an opportunity to have many discussions with CLT, as well with information, and been provided a lot of information from our leadership team, very valuable information as we go forward over the next couple of days to make some big decisions. Many of us have had coffee with local business owners as well as ratepayers, And based on these great discussions and the information provided, I would like to make a motion. The intent of this motion is to set the tone and act as a motivator of sort as we go through the various proposed strategies and focus areas that we're going to discuss throughout the days. I would move that Council adopt a negative 4%, a 4% decrease overall for the 2019 City of Grande Prairie budget. Speaking to this motion, this number allows CLT to determine where it is best to make these financial decisions, and it is exclusive of any financial engineering, restructuring discussions, and other numbers we may achieve. This number is based on the 2018 performance, as well as other revenue streams already highlighted today. It is, in my opinion, obtainable without major change and/or personnel implications, while leaving room to invest and grow in our community. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Clayton. Can you clarify, appreciate there was some context sitting there, the specific motion that you're making?
Sure. So the specific motion is adopt a -4 on the overall complete 2019 City of Grande Prairie budget.
Okay.
As Director Walker implied, there was potentially a -3. That was with potential other financial restructuring, etc. This is exclusive of any financial restructuring. It's off the budget prior to restructuring discussion.
Okay, so I just want to clarify your intent. Management's recommendation is a -3. So are you seeing this as an additional 1% decrease, or are you seeing this as a 4% decrease 4%. Plus the potential of if council adopts the strategies, which would be a total of a 7?
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So just important to clarify that. And does your motion consider the 2020 to 2022 years, or is it specific?
It's only on specifically to 2019.
Okay, just on 2019. Okay, so is council clear on Councillor Clayton's motion? If we're clear on that, or if we have any questions, let's make sure that we get them. But we'll open up for discussion, debate. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Before I contribute discussion debate, could I just get the motion as the recording secretary has it once she's ready for that?
Sure, absolutely. We want to make sure that we're all voting on the same thing and that management's heard the same item. Ms. Williams.
What I have for a motion is moved by Councillor Clayton that Council adopt a -4% increase on the overall to the complete City of Grande Prairie budget for 2019.
I think an important part there, if I understand the context of the motion, is that it is exclusive of any additional financial strategies that management might recommend.
If council would prefer, I could put a minimum of a -4 reduction, and it leaves the opportunity for further discussion on financial restructuring or engineering. I'm fine either way, but this is prior to any other discussions on strategies, financial restructuring, engineering that we will discuss later in the day. This is on the budget as it stands right now.
Sure. So just again to clarify, I think management. So this would be on top of management's recommended.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I want to ensure that we're all seeing this the same way. If council adopts management's recommendations, that's a 3, and then a 4 would be 7 total. And so I want to, so does that mean that we're presupposing this motion that we're not accepting any of management's recommendations?
Oh, but we haven't had an opportunity to discuss and debate those.
Okay. So, Ms. Williams, so I think we need to clarify that. And I'm not sure, Ms. Walker, if you'd have a recommendation on, from a financial perspective, how to frame that motion. I just want to make sure that we get the intent right, that it's described well, and so that we can all discuss and debate the same thing. Ms. Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I would suggest that the motion refer to the removal of additional $4.68 million from the budget through either increased revenue sources or reduced expenditures.
Sure.
I'm fine with that.
Comfortable with that, Councillor Clayton? Okay, so that's a bit more specific and gets us to the number. And then gives us that opportunity to discuss the strategies separately potentially. So, Ms. Williams, are you able to record as? Can you restate that again, Ms. Walker?
That council direct management to remove an additional $4.68 million from the 2019 budget through either the use of increased revenues or reduced expenditures in 2019.
Okay. Ms. Williams, are you able to capture that?
I think so.
Councillor Clayton, is that
Sure. Yep.
your intent?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And can I just ask a question for administration? So, my understanding that is administration then will come back with how they're going to achieve this. As I mentioned, I don't think that there's, based on our performance of 2018 and other revenue streams that have been discussed, I don't think there's a lot of implications in the current budget. But at this point, you will come back with recommendations of how or where you see it. Because the only reason I asked that question is when you added additional revenue, I don't want it to all of a sudden the recommendation on the utility charge to double that to make up the difference. So, you come back with the recommendation as you see fit, but there will be an opportunity for council to discuss that.
Ms. Walker, and then I'll also recognize Mr. Galante. Ms. Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I just want to be clear that the financial strategies that I presented just prior to this discussion are included in the budget document that you see before you. So this would be a full, nearly $4.7 million reduction, further reduction.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Galante?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be crystal clear, the strategies will be voted in the afternoon after lunch, the 5 different strategies, and over the next day or day and a half, the packages will be voted. If all votes were positive, that would achieve the -3, and management will present a basket of options to council if the motion on the floor passes in order to achieve the differential proposed on the motion. Probably tomorrow or at the end of the second day, because we'll need some time to work on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So are we all clear then on the motion and the intent of the motion? Okay. And then that gives us an opportunity for discussion and debate on that motion. Councillor Palat. And I'll just give a heads up that I'll enter the queue somewhere. I always like to make it a practice not to be right at the front because I'm the guy controlling the buttons, and I also don't like to be the end to close discussion. So I'll try to enter somewhere in the middle and just sort of take a bit of a turn. Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'm not wanting to speak on the motion yet. I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification from administration. So while you're in the hot seat, Mrs. Walker, I just want to go back to our November 6th Corporate Services Committee agenda. And in that agenda, it is showing that we're going to have a surplus, or we're going to be in the black this year of $2.8 million. I just want to clarify that that's the correct number. And within that number, I just, I guess once I'll give Mrs. Walker a chance to find that to make sure I'm saying the right number. So that's, so there's $2.8 million there. One of the other items I noticed within that, there was a lot of good conversation we had on a thing, and one of our meetings was bylaw enforcement wrote down $629,000 in this $2.8 million surplus. Because at that point we were forecasting a certain level of photo radar. We didn't achieve it, and I can appreciate forecasting. But if we're looking at year-over-year numbers, that $629,000 wouldn't show up in 2019, would it? I guess my question is that 629? We're saying apples to apples of 2018. If we're saying 3.2 million in photo radar revenue, and 2019 photo radar revenue, this $629,000 wouldn't have been incurred in 2019. Is that correct?
Ms. Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So the 629,000, we did build that deficiency into the 2019 budget, and so there was an overall net decrease for that fine revenue in 2019. So that's built into what you're seeing before you in the budget package. The question related to the surplus for 2018 is actually projected to be $1.6 million. We do have the option of utilizing the winter stabilization reserve to bring the total surplus up to $2.8 million. Yes.
Okay. So, and I guess this is one of the things that's really hit me when I look through this, and I want to really thank administration. I mean, that's a big number. I mean, to come up with a $2.8 million surplus, I understand it's pretty normal process to use the winter stabilization reserve, because that's what it's for when you have a heavy snowfall like we did. So I'm assuming that'll probably come to council in March, and that's kind of a normal process. But the bigger thing that hit me on this as a council, the really thing that hit me on this is, you know, realistically, we're at about $3.4 million that had photo radar been the same numbers it's going to be next year. And we pitched a 3.7% tax increase to the community last year. So we moved our budgets up by $3.7 million, and administration found us 3.4 of it indirectly. And so I just want to remind us as a council, we chose to raise the taxes last year. We didn't have to. Our administration would have been able to hold a zero last year. We chose to raise the taxes. So I want to give reward to the administration for doing their parts to holding the tax line, but just more maybe reminding council, we could have voted zero last year and we would have been fine. And so I just want us to consider that when we're talking about today. I can appreciate we have different objectives, and we're councillors that we're supposed to be here to push and massage your organization a little bit, and administration's here to make sure the organization runs. And so we have two different goals sometimes, but last year we could have achieved a zero group. And so for me, it's disappointing when I realize that without putting a whole lot of pressure on the organization, we could have had a zero last year. So we chose to raise it up by 3.7%.
Thanks, Councillor Platt. I see next Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'm not sure if we're putting the cart before the horse or at this point in time. I would like to see the lowest possible tax decrease we can, but I'm not sure what we're going to get if we went to -7. And I would like to hear all the presentations before I make my decision. But saying that, I lost my tone here. I feel that I think it's totally doable. I'm not sure exactly where we would see obviously the cuts or the things that we're not going to be able to fund. And I'm not sure at this point in time if I'm ready to make that vote. And was wondering if we could use this 7% as an incentive as we go through the deliberations and make that as a goal. And if we are a little bit short, that's fine. And if we're a little bit achieve better than what we feel we can get, then that's fine too. But at this point in time, there's a little uncertainty on what to expect. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. I see Councillor Blackburn's in the queue, and you're the last name so far. So I'll just enter here to say that I guess my challenge is maybe somewhat similar to Councillor O'Toole's, but on a slightly different tact. I guess I would be concerned about this motion at this point in our discussions because the impact of the motion is unclear, obviously, and my ability to support an additional tax decrease is dependent on what it is we're impacting. I would also hate to see council make a motion that, as I understood it, was direction to administration to change the budget, and then decide that when they come back with how they would do that we don't like those changes, and then see us have to backtrack on that. So if it was a motion to direct management to bring forward a scenario for council's consideration, that's one thing where we could have a look at that scenario and decide whether or not we liked it. As framed right now, and maybe this is a bit more of a technicality, but I foresee a potential of council saying we want to change the budget to remove that $4.68 million, and then at the end of the budget not liking what it looks like and having to backtrack on that. I would personally prefer to vote on something that says, management, tell us how you might do something like that, and giving management that indication right now that we would like to do that, and then having a chance to consider whether it's actually something we want to do. Because right now, for me, I can't vote on this because essentially I feel like I'm voting on it blind on what, change the budget, but I don't know what that's going to look like. I'd rather see what that's going to look like, and then vote on whether or not I want to go forward with that. And that filled up the queue, by the way. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Councillor Clayton's motion really surprises me, and I'm a little bit taken aback by it, I have to say. The administration, in consultation from time to time with council, has been working for months on coming up with the suggestions that we're going to work on over the next couple of days, and to ask for this additional change in time to consider it during our budget deliberations in the next 2 days, it just strikes me as being unreasonable. With due respect to Councillor Clayton, however, I really don't think that it's a good idea to tackle it in this manner. The other thing I wanted to mention is this whole budgeting process that we're entering into this year is brand new to us. And I know that over time, we're going to learn more about what priority-based budgeting may do for us. And I believe that over the course of even as short a time as the next year, we will be learning more about efficiencies that can be realized that would change the plans for 2020 and beyond. And so I look upon this as sort of like putting a cake in the oven and then taking it out too soon to decide whether or not it's been done right. I really do trust in administration's handle on things, and I also trust in the fact that PBB is going to provide us more than we're seeing right now in the proposed 4-year budget. I would like to see us progress carefully. I'm very much in favor of most of the things that are being proposed in this budget. I'd like to see us have the opportunity to operate within it and make improvements as we go without choosing an arbitrary number to tackle. So I would not be supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Blackburn. I see Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I think that a motion like this is helpful because looking at management, they've had quite the task before them where they've got 9 people with very different and very strong opinions about where the taxes should go. There's never been a clear direction from council of here's the tax rate that we expect to see. We've had informal discussions, but we've never actually given clear direction of here's where the tax rate should go. And with that in mind, I actually have troubles even thinking about voting for future things. So if I have a sense that council's got an appetite for a -4, or if council's got an appetite for a 0 or a +2, my votes are going to be very different later in the day. So having a clear view of how the rest of council feels would be very helpful to me. And that's why I like making a vote like this. I would point out that our procedure bylaws are pretty easy in terms of a motion to reconsider. And we have even more freedom because technically we're not meeting as council right now. Technically, we're meeting as a committee right now. So yeah, it might look kind of funny to go back and revisit this motion at the end after we've seen the rest of the deliberations. But I think that that having a motion like this pass could lead to a better informed decision-making process throughout this. So I think the 4% is very debatable. Is that the best number? That's almost another matter then. Is it worth passing a motion like this? And I really think it is worth passing a motion like this at the beginning of our deliberations.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bressie. I see Councillor Palat.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'm kind of on the same path as Councillor Bressie. I mean, I'd like to know the pulse. I mean, we're going to get into buckets and we're getting into budgets and we're going to move things around. And I think at the end of the day, like we did last year, you want to settle on a number for the community. And I think for me, I want to know that that number for the community shows that we can do a reset without it coming on the back of financing. And so I'm having a hard time wanting to, I like the motion that was put forward. I will be supporting the motion because I think it's doable. I think it's very doable. Having said that, though, I'd like to have this conversation before, and I appreciate it's out now, because I don't want us to be talking about debt as part of this restructuring until we figure out the other buckets first. I think that's the wrong thing to do to the community. And I'm sorry, you guys, I hate to be this guy. I mean, because I get this sent to me, it feels like daily, but at some point we need to address this chart. And it's not that I want to pick on administration. I think over time we've gotten ourselves in a spot. But, you know, our taxes are staggeringly high against other municipalities. I've taken a lot of time to go through other municipalities' financial statements. They have swimming pools. They have counties they're dealing with. They have police funding framework issues. They have hockey rinks. They have parks. They have skate park. They have all the same things as us, and yet we're about 70% higher than our median average. And at some point, we have to address that. And so I have confidence in this administration today. That's why I feel confident saying this. Last year, I pushed for 0, wondering if that was the right number. I have more confidence in saying a -4 is okay today, because I actually think we have the administration and the team in place in the city right now that can pull this off. And I think we need to show the community that we can do this. And I think we owe it to our community to do this. It's the #1 biggest complaint we get from our community. It's not that we need more things. The biggest complaint we constantly hear is our taxes are too darn high. So I'll be supporting the motion, and I think this is a great conversation to set the tone of our budget.
Thanks, Councillor Palat. Councillor Friesen.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I agree that we need to start this process with understanding where we want to get to. And if we want to get to a number that's a little deeper than has been provided us, then we need to know it up front. I wouldn't mind voting on the strategies first and then having a look at what we want to get to. I think that simplifies things a little bit, but I'm not sure where I'm going to go with this motion, only because I'm a little concerned that we do a big deep cut this year and it limits then what we can do in following years, because I do believe that incremental change is going to help our expenses over the next several years. And to go that deeply this year maybe limits that. And would it be okay to do it right over a little longer period of time rather than doing it all up front and I think it's just a little more difficult to do. So I'm not sure where I'm going to go, although I like the bold move of Councillor Clayton very much, and we'll see where it goes. But that's my only concern: is do we do it over a few years more incrementally, or hit it hard to begin with? That's just something to think about. I want it to be sustainable.
Thanks, Councillor Friesen. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. Just a couple comments in regards of comments that have come up from other councillors. To Councillor Blackburn, let's remember that the original discussion for budget was intended to be 6 days. So I apologize that you're surprised by this, but when the time got shortened to 2.5 days, there may not have been the time allowed to have these discussions prior. The intent of this motion is to set the bar, set the tone for future discussions and decisions made today. I strongly believe that people should be allowed to keep their money in their pocket, and that government shouldn't be taking the money and making decisions with a bonus after that they made a surplus. The intent of keeping your own money in your own pocket has lots of merit, and I want council to remember that nobody's agreed that we're even going to support the restructuring at this point. At this point, the restructuring may not pass. We may not end up at a -7. So this budget is outside of that. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Bressie.
Thank you, Mayor Given. It just seems that we're having two debates here. One is, should we be voting on this motion or not right now? Are we ready to have this motion? And one is the 4%. And I'd like to remind my colleagues that if you don't think that we should be voting on this motion right now, you could make a motion to table, and that might be appropriate. And the reason for that is because the way we're going right now, we're voting on a 4% decrease. And I'd hate to see that defeated just because we think it's the inappropriate time. And also, I honestly don't know where I'm going to land on a percentage yet. I'm very committed to a 0% or a decrease before any franchise fees or before any financing. 4%. I don't know if that's the right number or not, and I would love to hear from my colleagues what they think about the actual percentage, not just about whether or not we should be having this now. So I'd respectfully ask, if we're going to debate the merits vote on this now, that somebody make a motion to table, or else we actually talk about the motions on the table, which is a 4% decrease.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie. I see Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I'll make that motion to table it to the end of budget discussions. And for me, largely, I don't mind the motion. I know where Councillor Clayton's coming from, and from our citizen budget. We saw that there was an overwhelming number of respondents who said our taxes are incredibly way too high. I personally would like to go over the packages as they're presented, and then determine what we feel as a council is our tax rate. During this time, we can still flag items and take stuff off. If we want to chop $1 million off of roads per year, that might be helpful as well to administration, make their work a lot easier and maybe even lighter. For me, though, if this motion is to go now, I'm a no, because I think time is a huge factor, and I think administration has put in a considerable amount of time to present this and to create strategies that will help reduce the burden on our taxpayers and on the organization, as well as give us the ample room to run with the potential to make further changes in future years running up to 2022. To wantonly throw out a 4% at the beginning of the process, it's nice to have that in our back of our mind. But again, it doesn't enable administration to come back with carefully thought out and planned solutions as to how they're going to achieve that number. Instead, we're going to rush it to Friday and pass it. So I'd like to continue with the process as it is, go over the packages, and then we can vote on numbers later. But to Councillor Bressie's suggestion, I would move that we table Councillor Clayton's motion to the end of budget deliberations.
Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. And I was just, I could just as easily probably talk to our resident parliamentarian on council. But going by, and I'm looking over at Councillor Bressie, but as I'm going by my precedence of motions, it recommends, I believe, that, not even just recommends, that a tabling motion is not debatable. So it is a motion that will go without debate. And we'll vote on Councillor Thiessen's motion to table consideration of Councillor Clayton's motion to the end of budget discussions. So I'll call for the vote on that motion. Please vote. Thank you. That motion does carry, so that motion has been set on the table and will be considered at the conclusion of our budget discussions before we conclude our committee of the whole budget deliberations. So that allows us to, we're about 20 to 12. We had proposed taking our break at 12. We can absolutely start getting into discussion and debate on any of the financial strategies. That'd be my recommendation. I think Council wants to actually get into making some decisions, as evidenced by that motion. And so, but I don't know if necessarily we had a specific strategy to start with. So was management proposing one strategies first and then the next, or is it up to Council? I'll look at Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor Given. It's entirely up to you, whichever strategy you want to discuss first. It's perfectly fine with me.
But the first in the slide order is manage manpower, is that correct?
Sure. Yep.
Council, is it fair enough to start there? Start at the start, I guess. Councillor Plott, I see that you're in the queue. Is it on this, or is there another issue? Sure. Okay. So maybe if we could have the slide up with respect to managed manpower, Ms. Walker. And then is there, Council, I guess a question that I would have maybe to frame the start of our discussion is what latitude with respect to decision making on this does Council have? Is it a yes or no question? Is there any discernment available to Council in terms of our level of comfort in using this strategy to a greater extent or a lesser extent? Ms. Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So this strategy is really proposed as a yes or no a question. Intentionally delaying vacant positions does have or could have an impact on service delivery as it exists. And so by delaying it a short period of time, that would essentially match our normal recruiting process. We feel confident that we can deal with this type of delay. A delay longer than that could have potential impacts on our ability to provide the services that these positions would be required for.
Okay, thank you. I see a few folks, and absolutely if we have some questions about this, by all means. At some point, though, we should move to having a motion one way or another so we can discuss and debate and make some decisions. So if there's some questions needed, by all means, and then potentially moving to motions. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I wanted to ask for a little bit of clarity on some of this. The proposal is to intentionally delay hiring any vacated positions for a period of 2 months. It's been pointed out to me that it takes 6 to 8 weeks typically to fill a vacant position anyway. So are we talking about a 2-month delay in the start of that process, or are we talking about just sort of formalizing what's likely to happen anyway? That's the first of a couple of questions.
Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Yes, it is just formalizing the delay in recruiting for our vacant positions. It's the normal course of doing business, and you're absolutely correct. It typically does take between 6 and 8 weeks to do a recruitment. Likely, this is something that's under management's control, and likely we would manipulate that process a little bit in order to be able to achieve this outcome. But it ought not to impact significantly.
Okay, thank you. And just to follow up, you mentioned that management would be able to manipulate the process to some degree. So by passing this motion, we wouldn't be restricting management's ability to forego the delay if it was a position that would have a significant impact on productivity or efficiency.
Thank you, Mayor Given. That's exactly right, Councillor Blackburn. We would look at each individual position and on its own merits and the degree of critical need associated with it, and we would make decisions based on that. So we would see some positions being recruited in a faster pace than others.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Just a question, I guess, related to that. Is there an impact on any new positions that are proposed in the packages? What would be the impact of managed manpower on proposed new positions in terms of their hiring and when they may sort of effectively start for the city?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So this would actually delay the recruitment of any new positions that we have embedded in the 2019 budget to the second quarter of the year.
Okay. So it isn't just about vacant positions, it's also an intentional delaying of any proposed additions that council would see later on.
That's correct, Mayor Given.
Councillor Platt.
Thanks, Mayor Given. I'm not sure if this is part of the managing manpower, but I'm just wondering, we'd received a salary component from 2018-19 package when we had some of our deliberations pre-budget. I'm just wondering if this is impacting our training and development and our overtime. Is that part of this $2.9 million, or is that going to be a separate number later on?
Ms. Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So when estimating the impact of this initiative, this would be an impact across all of the wage and benefit components that a City of Grande Prairie employee would typically be eligible for. So that amount is embedded in this 2.9 million.
So I guess I'd have a little bit of concerns with this, and I voiced them earlier. But it's concerning to me that we're talking about finding efficiencies and we're talking about getting better, but we're increasing our overtime. And I'm not sure why we'd be needing to increase overtime if we're talking about getting efficient and we're talking about potentially hiring more staff. So that's a little bit of a red flag for me, to be honest. The other one that I'm still concerned about, that I think we have a big swing, that I think we have literally, in my opinion, a $500,000 swing, is how much money we're spending on training and seminars for our staff currently. I think this is a conversation in itself the council should be serious about, because I want to remind us as a council that every time we send somebody in a course, they're also not doing what we hired them to do. And as important as it is to get educated, we're spending a lot higher than what industry would spend on training. And because of it, we have people that aren't doing the job we hired them to do. They're in a course. So this is actually a double-edged sword for us. And I think I want to make sure we recognize that somewhere in here. I don't want that to be lost in this. I can appreciate the 2.9 million of how we're going to get a strategy. I think there's an opportunity for council and administration to cut some of those things that don't actually directly impact a job. If the goal today is not to let anybody off, which is certainly not my goal, I think there's opportunities for us to find savings in those areas that are probably close to $1 million, in my opinion. So.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Platt. And just by all means, if we have questions of clarification from management about the strategy, let's try to make sure that we do that, and then get on to debating the merits of the strategy, or are there other issues that are related? Because at this point, we don't have a motion that we're debating right now. I've got Councillor Clayton, O'Toole, and then Friesen in the queue. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Director Walker, based on I think the total number was 2.9 million, the impact for 2 months. So is it fair to assume that by delaying each month, it's an additional $1.5 million?
Ms. Walker?
Approximately.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I haven't done that calculation, Councillor Clayton. I would suspect that it would be on a reducing scale. There would be positions that would be required beyond that 2-month period that would become critical in that farther out term. And so the anticipation of extending further was not considered in this calculation.
Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. Ms. Walker, you talked about the 6 to 8 week delay in rehiring. Is there a possibility that that position may not necessarily be needed, and that particular amount of time could, because of technology and stuff like that, that position could be sort of not necessary anymore? Would that be taken into consideration at that time as well?
Ms. Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. So as a normal course of management's review and our service delivery models that we expect to conduct in commencing in 2019, we would expect that there would be positions that would be impacted by those service delivery models. And one of the tools that management would use is not filling positions that weren't necessary to continue on with the services that are being provided. So yes.
Thank you.
I have Councillor Friesen next, and I just had one question before you go, Councillor Friesen. So, Ms. Walker, has management ever formally utilized or recognized managed manpower in a budget in the past?
Thank you, Mayor Given. Yes, in 2018, we recognized $350,000 in managed manpower.
So does this effectively equate to a formal, via motion of council, a formal reduction of the flexibility that might be inherent in the budget? Like in the past, the ability to manage manpower might have provided management an ability to achieve different financial results if things were tight. And so by doing this, are we essentially removing that flexibility?
Thank you, Mayor Given. Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Friesen, you're up next. Thanks very much for letting me jump in there with that question.
That's fine. Thank you, Mayor Given. So I would like to move that council accept this strategy as presented.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Friesen. So we have something for discussion and debate. So we can open that conversation now. And I see Councillor Palat in the queue.
I love the strategy. I guess if we're speaking of the motion, I wouldn't support it because I actually think we're still high. We're not where we could be on this. I really, truly believe if we're going to have this discussion, you know, we're adding $384,000, just about $385,000 from just last year for more training and more overtime. And I think that should be added as well into this number, because I don't think that's an acceptable amount. I don't see why it's needed, personally. I think that number could be still lower. And the other thing I'm just going to ask is maybe for administration on this. What happens if we get 3 months into a position and you know, just looking at some data that we have, I mean, in the last 10 years, this was from administration that we got a little while back, we've had 26% population growth, but we've had 67% employment growth. So I have to think, my gut has to say that there's probably the odd position that after 2 months you maybe go, maybe we didn't need Becky or Steve. And this isn't my intent to let people go, but I think at the same time we have to realize over time and attrition, there might be positions that we don't need to rehire. And so I'm wondering, what's our process for that? Or is there a business case if somebody leaves the organization that we automatically have to hire them? Or after 2 months, if we realize maybe that position isn't as relevant as we thought, do we have to rehire? I guess is my question.
Ms. Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. There is a pretty significant review process that occurs with any position that is either being requested to be filled through vacancy or requested to be filled as a new position. A business case is developed, so each individual position is reviewed and analyzed based on the business case that's presented to the management team. And so the short answer is yes, we do a review, and yes, we would not approve the filling of a position if we felt that that position was no longer needed in the organization.
Okay. So thanks for that, and I think that's important for the community to hear that we're just out not willy-nilly hiring and replacing people at all times, so I appreciate that answer. I'm going to ask if I can amend the motion. I can appreciate that Councillor Friesen's trying to get the ball rolling on the 2.9 number. I would like council to at least consider us putting no more money back into training at this point and overtime. I think we should be able to hold a line on those two items. So it's an additional amount. So I'd like to amend it so we're approving the managed manpower to $3,285,000, up from the 2.9 that it's currently being proposed as.
So I appreciate the intent of the amendment. I want to clarify that we're doing two of the same things. I think if we want to make some amendments to reduce the amounts proposed in 2019 for training and overtime, absolutely fair game for council to make a motion on that. I'm just not 100% sure if they are the same thing as managed manpower. They have the same implication.
I'm sorry, I thought I'd asked that earlier, and it sounded like that was part of this bucket. So that's why I'm trying to put it in now.
Yeah, so let's just clarify, Ms. Walker. Councillor Plot's amendment would be to recognize 3.289, I think I heard you say?
Yeah, 3.285, and just to speak this, is basically just holding a zero on training and overtime.
Okay.
So that's what it would be.
So if the intent of the motion is to see no increase in training and overtime in the 2019 budget, that's a pretty clear-cut motion. And I just want to make sure that we're not putting apples and oranges in the same blender here. So I just want to clarify that with Ms. Walker. Absolutely, if the one motion passes and we want to do a follow-up motion specific to those two items, for sure. I just want to make sure that we're getting that straight. Ms. Walker?
So included in the $2.9 million is a factor that includes savings for benefits, where staff development funds would be paid for through, as well as overtime. So that it's a holistic savings when we delay the filling of a vacancy or the or establishing a new position. So those amounts are effectively already included in that $2.9 million reduction proposal. Does that make sense?
I guess if I don't hear anything that says that it's significantly different, then I guess we let the amendment stand. Councillor Platt, is that still your intent? Yeah.
Sorry, I guess for me, if we're talking about the managed manpower, and this is part of managed manpower, which it sounds like it is, I would think we discuss it within that bucket. I mean, I don't mind making a separate motion about it, but I mean, I think, I'm not to put words in Mrs. Walker's mouth here, but it sounds like this is part of this package. So this managed manpower would include overtime and training.
I guess what I'm hearing Ms. Walker say, and let's just talk it out so we all have the same understanding, is that the $2.9 million in savings, a portion of that $2.9 million would arise from the fact that we would not have to pay 2 months of benefits to an employee position that was not filled right away, or we would not have to pay training. There would be no training costs for those positions. So I'm not sure that that's the same as reducing the overall amount of training that's available in the organization. Like, I think it's tied to the vacancy.
Okay. I'm fine with withdrawing my amendment. I'll be just making a motion after I make a motion on this, or finalize this motion.
Sure, absolutely. And
Thank you.
Like I say, I think that way we just have that added level of clarity. Because one, we're talking about how long do we formally say we're going to leave positions vacant for, and the other, I think we're talking about how much do we budget for overtime and training for the organization. So, Councillor Platt, we'll make sure that we get back to you after we could deal with the $2.9 million of managing vacancies. Councillor Blackburn?
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just a question for clarification. Are we voting on a motion to accept the principle, or are we voting on a motion to say, yes, we want to see $2.9 million reduced through this practice?
Sure. I believe it's specific to the amount, but I'll look to Ms. Walker to confirm. Ms. Walker?
So what management is looking for is a motion to approve the use of managed manpower in our budget. We already have this amount incorporated in the -3 tax increase that you have been presented with today. So not gaining approval would add $2.9 million to the cost, to the bottom line cost.
Okay. I see Councillor Bressie in the queue.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit. I'm trying to get a sense of how restrictive this policy is if council approves this motion. And the reason I say that is I really approve this in principle, but I also want to make sure you guys have the flexibility to be able to say either, hey, we're not realizing our financial goals and we think we can stretch this out 2.5 months instead of 3 months. At the same time, I also want you guys to have the flexibility to say, actually, that position is very mission critical and we're not going to wait 2 months for that one position and organization comes up. So can you talk about what kind of flexibility you still have if we pass this?
Walker?
Thank you, Mayor Given. In fact, I think that management still has some flexibility in determining what positions are filled and when they're filled. So we do still have some maneuverability within the framework of this initiative.
Thanks, Councillor Bressie, and thanks, Ms. Walker. Is there any other discussion or debate on Councillor Friesen's motion to approve the recommendation for managed manpower and to remove the $2.9 million of expense from the budget? I don't see anybody else in the queue. So then we'll go to a vote on that motion. Please vote. You can just make sure your vote registered, Council. There's one, I'm shy, one vote. Just have a glance up at your screen, make sure, thank you. That motion carries. That brings us till 12. Councillor Platt raised the idea of training and overtime. Councillor Platt, with your okay, can we return to that immediately coming back from lunch so that we have some time to discuss them? Yeah. Okay. So we're right at our 12 o'clock. We'll come back at 1 o'clock, and the first order of business will be to give an opportunity for Councillor Palat to bring forward a motion on training and overtime costs. Thank you.